but this is our first of 2018. If you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. We've got our flag right here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. So we've got a great program here for you tonight, but I want to tell you, before we get started, the most important part of this evening is to hear from you. And you're going to hear a couple of staff presentations, but we're not going to belabor those points. The most important thing is we want to get to your public comments because we want to hear what your thoughts are. We are likely going to have, this is the podium for the microphone for everybody, and we'll just have everybody line up when the time comes. So this is what tonight's going to be looking like. We'll do some welcome and introductions. I'm going to introduce our deputy mayor in a moment to introduce the council, and then I'll introduce staff. We'll talk about the two staff presentations are from the police department and from Public Works to hear what's going on and what you'll be seeing in regard to public work projects this year. Then I'll give a brief progress report about where we're at and where we're going. And then we're going to, like I said, we're going to hear from you. And I'll stay until everybody's done. I think we've got about a 2-hour window, but 2.5, but we'll get through it. And we really want to hear from you. Okay, and let's do welcome introductions. This would be a perfect time to introduce our deputy mayor, Susan Honda. And she's going to introduce our council.
Thank you for being here tonight. First of all, I'd like to introduce our city council. We have Councilmember Deanie Duclos. You want to stand and wave? Councilmember Mark Copang. Councilmember Jesse Johnson. We also have Councilmember Lydia Sefa-Dawson, Martin Moore, and Hong Tran. And we're a 7-member city council. We're elected every 4 years, and we serve for 4 years. We meet on the first and third Tuesdays at City Hall. Our meetings generally start at 7. Often we have special meetings that will start as early as 5. And all those meetings, we welcome public input. We have, our job is to set policy, and the mayor's job is to follow through on the policy that we set. And so we have 2 different roles, the council and the mayor. The council has 3 council committees: the FEDRAC, which is chaired by Councilmember Duclos. We have Land Use and Transportation, which is chaired by Councilmember Copang. And we have Parks, Human Services, Public Safety, which is chaired by Councilmember Johnson. And Lydia Sefa-Dawson is here if she wants to wave. Hello, glad to see you. Earlier this year, we had a retreat, and the council came up with 3 items that we want to work with this year. And the first is to increase sustainable revenue streams to fully fund the city budget and programs. Second, to enhance economic development activities to maximize opportunities in federal way. And third is to develop a plan to reduce homelessness. We had a really awesome retreat, and we are working on these items, and we look forward to continue working on them throughout the year. If you ever want to get in touch with us, it's really simple. You can email us, you can call us, you can stop us in the grocery store, wherever you see us. If you want to email the whole council, go on the city webpage and you can just click on one thing, and the email will go to all of the city council at one time. So thank you for being here, and looking forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you, Susan. We've got a great city council, and they're great policy partners. We do have different roles, but we can't accomplish anything without working together, and we really do work well together. Okay, and we also have key staff members. When we were talking about 4 years ago, when we started Neighborhood Connection, the idea was really to bring City Hall to you. So we've got a lot of the department directors here, and it's very important to make sure that we get all the feedback. in the back of the room, hold on. Well, we've got Kathy Arndt, my administrative assistant. Hi, Kathy. Could you make sure, and we haven't had a chance to talk yet, but when everybody comments, let's make sure we take down everyone's name, and then we'll make sure we get their contact information and make sure that as best we can, we follow up on each individual comment to make sure that we do that. Okay, so these are our management team. Where the management team members, please raise your hand. I think you're in the back and around the room. Let's give them a round of applause and thank you for the work they do. And so what we want to do is when you have a particular issue, what I'll do tonight is I'll try to match up the department director, whether it's, we brought the Rick Perez with, we're our senior traffic engineer, and we brought the public works director, police chief, and some of their personnel, and we'll match those up and get those addressed right away. So the first thing we're going to do is a public safety briefing by our chief of police. Chief?
Good evening, everyone. Glad to be with all of you this evening. I'm going to be sharing some crime and safety information. And one of the areas I'm going to cover tonight is crime statistics. We're going to look at crime numbers citywide, and we're also going to look at crime numbers on our west end of our town, which is known to us as Sector 1. And we'll look at the reporting district for this particular school and our surrounding neighborhood. And I'm also going to share with you what I believe are what's impacting crime and violence in our community and in our country in general, and maybe looking at for some ways of reducing crime, but I'd like to share that with you tonight. I'm also going to share with you some of the tactics and stuff that we're using within our own city to reduce crime and to keep our community safe. I think maybe a little unique to what other jurisdictions are doing. So I'd like to share that with you. And then just our contact information to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and how to sign up on Safe City website and follow us, communicate directly with us in the police department. So crime statistics. This is our city. Our city's broken up into 4 sectors, 4 policing sectors. And all of you, most of you are living in Sector 1. And overall, our city is 23 square miles, and we're about 97,000 population. We are the 5th largest city in King County, and we are the 9th largest city in state of Washington. In 2006, we were the 4th fastest growing city in the state of Washington. So we had a tremendous population boom in 2016. So overall, when you look at crime, we're required to report 26 crimes to the FBI. It's NYBERG numbers. And overall, when you look at all those 26 crimes, we had a crime reduction of 10% when you compare 2016 to 2017, overall crime reduction. When you look, so the overall crime, we had a 13% reduction in auto theft. Our commercial burglary went up 5%. Residential burglary went up 2%. Total of from year to year, you're looking at 6 crimes difference. We saw a tremendous reduction in theft, saw a reduction in robbery, 12%, sex offense down 9%, vandalism is down 23%. So why is there a significant downward trend for crime? A couple things. We're seeing a tremendous reduction in mail theft, fraud, and vehicle prowls and theft, those types of theft, simply because our financial institutions have kind of caught on. There's a tremendous mail theft. People aren't sending checks in the mail as much. Everything's being direct deposited. So these crooks have figured out that stealing mail and going through your mail is not very fruitful. So they've kind of moved on. So they're moving on to package theft. So corporate America is getting a little smart. Now they're getting to a point where they're going to leave packages in your trunk or in your vehicle or maybe put it in your house. So crime trend will change depending on environment, technology, and so forth. But our overall crime reduction is being reduced because of those things. Sector 1, our west end of our city. Overall, there was a crime reduction of 12%. And then when you look at non-criminal reports, overall, this is our by far the biggest sector within our city, and it's primarily residential areas. And in non-criminal offenses, we saw a reduction of 9% in 2017 versus 2016. Twin Lakes area, this is a reporting district 6, 2 and 17. When you look at just these macro area, we saw a tremendous crime reduction, 94 to 46 total crimes, a reduction of 51%, and non-criminal offense, again, about 49%. So pretty quiet in this area in terms of overall crime this past year. So we've been having crime has been trending down really for the past 13 months. Since March of last year, 2017, our crime's been just kind of trending down. And in 2018, this is just crime numbers for January and February. You can see that our overall crime is down 15%. Our overall crime is down 26% in February. We're also seeing double digits in March as well. And I can tell you right now, this crime trend will not continue. 20% reduction from the previous year. Crime is cyclical. It goes up and down. We are definitely downward trend. We haven't had a homicide this year. In fact, we haven't had a homicide for 5.5 months. So last November was our last homicide within our city. And gun crime is down 31% overall from last year to this year when you look at first quarter. So we're trending down. I might regret saying that tonight, but overall, as a police chief, I am very pleased to see our overall numbers trending down. I'll share with you some of our tactics that we're using to impact crime, but we're doing really well. Reducing crime, the dependency on drugs. When you look at crime reports, our crime analyst reads every police report that comes through, and she says between 80 and 90% of crime has a nexus to drugs. So if we can reduce the dependency of drugs in America, we can significantly reduce violence and crime. The opioid companies distribute a significant amount of pain medication to Americans. As a result of that, we have a lot of people who got hooked on pain medication. So when we started to really catch on, and you're seeing the efforts at the federal level, state level, local, we're turning off the faucet. So what's happening now is people they're addicts. They still need that opioid. So now they're hooked on heroin. And heroin, 90% of it is coming up from the South. It's organized crime. People are looking to make money, but it comes down to dependency. So there's treatment for addicts. We are working at every level within government to reduce the level of drugs coming into our community. Another area that's really booming is marijuana. Marijuana business is booming. Big business, big money. And again, it's organized crime. And we thought that if we legalize marijuana, that it would eliminate the black market. I can tell you it's completely the opposite. We're seeing things that we did not anticipate. We have numerous marijuana grows, homes that we're tackling. And that's not just federal way. It's regional, statewide. It's in other states as well, but marijuana business is booming. So we're tackling that head on. Other areas, so drug is a big issue. If we can reduce the dependency on drugs in America, in our community, it's going to reduce crime. Second area is people are exposed to way too much violence in our society. Whether it's Hollywood, movies, video games, news media, our kids are just being inundated with violence. And unfortunately, some of our people, kids and adults, their conflict resolution is, hey, I'm going to commit violence with gun. And you get copycats. So anytime big incident occurs and there's tremendous media coverage, I'm thinking, hey, we're probably going to have another incident, copycat. But people are exposed to violence. And for law enforcement, for us, we deal with the most extreme and advanced stages of this stuff. We can't do it alone, right? Socioeconomic factors, other factors influence crime. And I know most of that burden rests with the police. I get that. That's our role. We got to take a leadership role. But clearly, people are inundated with violence, and people are using violence because of the negative influence. Another area, high percentage of individuals who commit crime or violence grow up in abusive, neglectful household. Okay? They lack positive role models. So we have to do whatever we can as a society, as a community, to support children and support families. When you don't have that positive role model, you're learning about values and guiding principles from the school. You're not getting that positive influence. That creates problems for us. Okay, so if we can have healthy families, it's going to do huge in reducing crime and making our community safer. Last thing I'll talk about, these are just macro things that I wanted to share with you, but it's firearm safety. 2 rules about firearms. I'm going to tell you. Either the firearm is on your person or it's locked up in a safe. That's the rule. Now, if you're cleaning your gun, and okay, I get that. But bottom line is, you should not have a firearm stuck in your mattress, in your closet. I'll tell you what, there's far more things happening with guns that's not going to ever grab the headline. People commit suicide with guns on a quite regular basis. Lock it up. You have kids who might bring guns to school because maybe they're being bullied. Maybe they want to show off. It's accident just waiting to happen. If you carry a firearm, you think you're going to get one for your safety, this is typically what happens. You start carrying this on your hip. You know what? Pretty soon it starts to hurt your hip. And when you're driving in a car, it hurts your back. So what you do is you put the gun in between your seat in your car, and you go to the grocery store, and then your gun gets stolen. Or you got loose guns in the house, and people know, kids talk. They say, hey, that house has guns. They're going to come in and take the gun. Now it's on the streets. So I'm going to tell you right now, if you get a gun, get a safe, lock it up, or wear it on your hip so it doesn't get lost. Okay? So one of the things we're going to do is on May 12th, we're partnering with other organizations. We're going to be giving away 350 handgun safes. So, and 50 trigger locks and 600 cable locks. First come, first serve. So just get in line. If you get there probably 9 o'clock, you'll get one of those gun locks. A lot of people aren't, not everybody looks in social media and look at the marketing stuff, but you're here, you're hearing about it, so send your adult son, daughter, get yourself a free handgun lockbox, okay? But that's going to be at the Sportsman Warehouse, 10 to 1 p.m., May 12th, okay? So if you get there an hour early, you should be able to get one of those for free. So again, guns got to be locked up or on your hip. Should not be in your purse. You're going to lose it. You're going to lose that gun. Something bad will happen. Even if somebody gets hurt, I'm looking across the room here, most of you are middle age or older, something happens with that gun. Guess what? You're going to get sued. And you're going to be responsible. Maybe not criminally, but civilly, you're going to get sued. If you got some assets and what have you, you could lose a good chunk of that, okay, just for your safety alone, for your liability reasons. Lock up that gun. Okay, something you should all be proud of. We are a nationally accredited law enforcement agency. What that means is we have a strategic plan for keeping our organization healthy, police department, our culture. We provide tremendous level of training for our people, high level. We're only one of 7 agencies in the state of Washington that's nationally accredited. Very difficult to attain. That's why most police departments don't pursue national accreditation. But it is the highest standard in accreditation that you can attain. We're a gold standard agency. It means we have great policies, high level of training for our people. I'm told that I need to move along here. Safe City cameras. We have 69 cameras. We received a $250,000 grant to add additional cameras. So we're improving our incident command room at the police department to add better monitoring capabilities, and we're going to add more cameras in our city. So Safe City program there. Automatic license plate readers. We have 3 vehicles equipped that reads thousands of license plates. It reads about 100,000 license plates a month between the 3 cars. We assign 2 officers to it, so we try to have it out all the time for 3 shifts. We catch tremendous number of criminals that way. Wanted individuals, stolen vehicles. Right now, the trend with criminals is stealing a car is a precursor for committing another crime. They don't want to be traced. They want to keep the anonymity, so they steal a car, commit a crime. Yeah, we track the vehicle, but it's not the owner of the vehicle. So that's typically what happens. So we want to catch these stolen vehicles. It reduces crime. And I know we talk about crime, and most of you worry about gun violence. I'm going to tell you right now, if you're not selling drugs, you're not involved in human trafficking, so forth, the chances that somebody stranger is going to shoot you or hurt you statistically is just next to none, very small. You're more likely to be hurt and killed by your own family member than anyone else. About half of our murders are domestic violence related. About half. So what I'm going to tell you is distracted driving. For years, we've had fatalities for car accidents go down, but it's been trending up, and it equates to smartphones. People are distracted driving. When accidents happen, when you get that bad phone call that somebody's hurt or killed in your family, it's going to be probably through a traffic accident. These are random. It doesn't matter if you're young, old, rich, poor, it doesn't matter. Traffic accidents are strangers coming together and bad things happening. When you have a shooting at a parking lot, it's drug dealers coming together and it's a drug rip, something negative's happened, okay? So I'm just telling you right there that the safest thing is wear your seatbelt, make sure your car's safe, maintained so it doesn't break down in the middle of the road. And that's the greatest threat to you and your family. You could follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Safe City program. There's a website for our Safe City. You can communicate directly with police department personnel. And then our dispatch, non-dispatch number there, non-emergency dispatch number, you can call that 2121 number, and you can talk to our dispatch if you don't want to, if you're reluctant to call 911. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you very much for your time.
Good evening. My name is Marwan Saloom. I'm the Public Work Director for the city, and now I'm going to give you a presentation mainly to explain to you all of the construction project that's taken place in 2018. So hopefully you'll be able to avoid that area and get to your destination without any problem. On this map, you could see that it's highlighting all of the area that will be under construction this year. The first project is the 2016 overlay, and it's mainly on South 312 between Pacific Highway and 28th Street, and on 23rd Avenue between 312 and 316. That project is under construction at the present time. So if you've been in that area, you have seen some of the construction going on, mainly the contractor working on improving the wheelchair ramps and doing some dig out. And within the next 2 to 3 weeks, they will be doing some grading at the edge and doing the overlay. We are anticipating this project to be done by the end of May. The second project on that list is all of those green dots that you see within the city center area. This is the adaptive traffic control system. It's another term for it is intelligent transportation system. What we have is all of those traffic signals will be retrofitted with a new software that they will be able to communicate with each other, and they will be able to adjust to the demand as it exists at the time you're driving through. Our existing signal today are operated by a timing plan that our traffic engineer normally collect data from a traffic count at different time of the day, and they come up with a timing plan that they program into that signal. The new system will be a system that able to see exactly what's happening at the time that it's happening and make the adjustment necessary. And that particular program, we were able to get $1.6 million, $1.7 million in grant funding, federal grant funding, through 2 different applications. Now, I may have made other presentation to you in the past where we said this project will be under construction in 2018. The challenge we have that the federal government, where we got the money, they over-obligated the funding for all of their projects, which means that they have spent most of their money in 2017, 2018. So the only money available is 2019. So what they came back to the city and we renegotiated the contract where we are delaying the construction of that project till 2019. So hopefully late spring of 2019, that project will be in operation. The third project I have is Pacific Highway South. Now that project been in construction for a while. We started that project late 2016 and been under construction 2017, and we're hoping to have it completed by September of 2018. Now, that project go from 340th all the way to 359th, and it's going to extend the improvement that we already have all the way from 272nd to 340th, where you're going to have an HOV lane on both sides of the roadway, sidewalk, curb and gutter, street lighting, and so on. So that project should be completed by the end of September this year. The next project is 21st Avenue downtown staircase. Now, that is located on 316th. Oh, sorry. It's located on 316 right there. This is a red dash right there. This is a pedestrian connectivity between Town Square Park and PAC, the Performing Arts Center. This project, the design on it is completed. We took it out to bid earlier this year, and the bid came in a little bit higher than the available budget. And the mayor directed us to do some value engineering on the project and bring it back and take it out to bid. In talking to some of the contractor and getting the mayor approval, we are hoping to take that project out to bid earlier next year rather than do it this summer, where most likely we'll not be able to finish the project, and we're going to finish it in 2018. And the recommendation from most of the contractor we talked to is bid it early in the summer, so it'll be one season project rather than two season project. And I'll show you some picture after this presentation on what that downtown staircase is going to look like. Military Road and 298, this is a project that will go out to bid sometime in June. It's a compact roundabout that's going to be constructed on Military Road at 298, and hopefully will be done this summer. It'll be completed by September of 2018. Southwest Campus and 16th Avenue, the two next project, those are an overlay project, except the color of the money is a little bit different. These projects are federally funded, and the local match for those projects came in from the city, but from the overlay program. Those projects will be going out to bid in May, early May. We are opening bid late May and getting council authorization, so it'll be in construction early July, and hopefully they'll be done by the end of September also. The next project is the streetlight LED project. This is a project that the council authorized to go into construction in 2018, where we're going to be replacing all of the existing streetlight system with an LED lights. The project is approximately $3.5 million, but we will be able to recover that money within the first 5 to 7 years. This is mainly saving on power cost. The project is underway right now in the design stage, and the implementation will be happening within the next month or so. The last project is not a street project, it's a surface water project, and it's on Lakota Park and Lakota Middle School. We had a dike around the wetland, and it's settled, where in the last couple of years we had some overflow coming in from the wetland into the park and flooding the park. So this project will take care of that, and it's scheduled for construction as soon as the school is over. We already bid it, we're ready to go, we're just waiting for the school kids to be out of school, and the project will proceed. This is the project for the downtown staircase. This is a plan view where you're going to have some staircase at different locations. So you're going to have some stair at different locations, and mainly the reason you see in that large of a project is you have a ramp that's going to be able to take people on wheelchair all the way up to the Performing Arts Center or the future hotel that's going to be constructed at that location. This is a view of the staircase, rendering of the staircase, looking at it from Town Square Park. And the next picture is looking at the staircase from the PAC, and you could see how it's going to look. It's going to be a very nice project when it's completed. This is adaptive traffic signal control. This is showing all of the location maybe blown up of that area, showing all of where those signals going to be retrofitted. Also, part of that project, we will have a control center at the city hall where we are able to monitor exactly what's happening within those intersections and make any necessary adjustment by staff monitoring all of that system. That concludes my presentation, and we'll be happy to answer a question at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Marwan. This is, I think, going to have a big impact on making sure that we get cars, coming through. I think that we all have experienced frustration about getting stopped light to light to light, and it takes some coordination to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, so let's talk about where we're at now and where we're going. This is where we were just 4 years ago. This is what your town square, this is what your downtown looked like. We had 21 acres that were either surrounded by cyclone fencing or looked like that. There was a special in the Mirror back in 2013 in which there were literally mattresses and needles in your downtown. This is what your town square park looks like now, and this is what your city council and I have been working on and your staff. This was at the grand opening 2 years ago, and just there over the weekend, and there were just, hundreds of people enjoying the playground and the park and all that. And it is actually interesting to take a look at, and it's interesting to see how far we've come now. You see where the old Toys R Us was, which was right there, and this wall, and now obviously that's a beautiful Performing Arts and Event Center. This summer, we're going to have Red, White, and Blues. We usually have well over 20,000 people attend that, and we want to make sure everybody comes out for that, and it's just a great community event, and we're already making plans for that. It starts at 4 o'clock in the great family entertainment. This is your new Performing Arts and Events Center, and with the transformation of your downtown, we have raised nearly 80% of the funds for your Performing Arts and Events Center. We just got $1 million more from the legislature last year, thanks to our state legislators. We've got a former state legislator, Linda Kochmar, and a former mayor. Let's give Linda a big round of applause. Thank you so much for your help in helping that raise money. We also have a former mayor, Jack Dovey, here as well. Let's give Jack a big round of applause. Thank you, sir. So a lot of that, what we're talking about right now are, talking about the institutional knowledge. When they were on council and in the councils that have come through, they had a commitment to the overlay and the public works, and there are things that are going on. But these designs here are really decades in planning and public discourse. So again, I think we've raised about $26 million. Right now, the interfund loan that we took in order to pay off the PAC, I think is just about $8 million right now, and now we're going to be working to lower that down. We've got 3 years to lower that balance down. The staircase that we're talking about, and I know there's been some controversy about the staircase, but I want to reiterate that the money for that is not coming out of the general fund, is coming almost primarily from state funds. $2.5 million out of that $3 million is coming from state funds that can only be used for capital funds. And then I think we got another $500,000 from King County funds that'll be doing this. And this will activate this entire area right here, which was once blighted, cyclone fenced, deserted downtown, which really, frankly, I want to talk to you about where we are now and where we're going. And that's at the core of what this is about. 4 years ago, this city, in my opinion, was facing a crisis. Your downtown was dying. Your city was on the verge, in my opinion, of having a downtown that was functionally dying. And that donut hole was growing and growing and growing. You were having people and businesses leave this city. The first and most important, in my opinion, to make sure that this city did not go down a pathway in which our home values, in which the entire value of the community would sink, started here. And that's why the activation of your downtown, it's an investment, just like we all do in our homes, just like we all do in certain things. Capital investments need to be made in your community to make sure that we don't fail as a community. And we were on the verge of failing. Now, as we turn the page, what we're doing, and I think the most important thing that I'm working right now as your mayor, is making sure that the finances of your department have long-term sustainability. And that's really what we're talking about. And I know that we're going to hear some public comment about, but I want to let you know that we've got to get on a sustainable pathway to make sure that we can pay for more police officers and make sure that we are not a city in decline. We are a city on the rise. This is with the ribbon cutting of the Performing Arts and Event Center. That's my little guy right here. Ben got to help cut us the ribbon. We've got the council members. We've got our Chamber of Commerce Executive Director, Becca. We've got all the council members here, former Deputy Mayor and Mayor Gene Burbidge. So that was a great day. And we've had a lot of great performances there, and that's going to really be a great thing for this community. This was the very first show at the Performing Arts and Event Center, jam-packed. It was just absolutely fantastic and a real example of what we're going to be doing in our downtown. This is the first State of the City. This is actually the first time that the State of the City was ever held out in the public, free to the public. And that was at the Performing Arts and Event Center. And I think we had about 630 people, 635 people. And the most that we've all, in our 27-year history, and Jack and Linda, they've provided State of the City addresses as our mayor. I think the most that we've ever had in our community was, probably about 150, 175 people. So the key thing is, and one of the most important things that we know is that we work for you, and we want to make sure that we are transparent and that we're letting people know what's going on. Just like that camera in the back of the room is to make sure that our meeting tonight is recorded. Your comments are going to be recorded, and they'll be played on Channel 21 as part of our process as Channel 21. So the University Initiative, probably one of the most important initiatives that has ever happened in our city. Last January, we cut a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, with University of Washington Tacoma, Highline College, Federal Way Public Schools, and the city of Federal Way. And what we're working on with the grant of $500,000 from the legislature, thanks to Representative Licciati and his work down there and all the legislators down there, we got $500,000, and we can start classes as early as this year in the fall. And we're working right now in an ongoing basis with UWT and Highline to make sure that's what the activation of your downtown is all about, because those classes will be offered. The plan is to be offered in our downtown. I know that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that space. If you know what Good Space tells, we're working right now to secure that location. We're going to have to come up with $100,000. Actually, I was talking to our superintendent, Tammy Campbell of our public schools, and she's willing to partner up and help us out. We were told in that budget that we needed at least $600,000 to start classes. The legislature, we got $500,000 for, so we're going to need to find $100,000 in the next, several months. Okay, public safety. The most important thing we do is public safety. When we had that homicide last April of that young man that was getting off that bus on Pack Highway on 312, we were actually experiencing a real spike in regional gang activity. There are certain formalized gang structures that were formulating. They were actually focused in South Seattle, Burien, White Center. Then they started activating in Renton and Kent and in surrounding areas. We had spillover violence that came into Federal Way, and we had several other instances that were occurring. I then convened all of the mayors and police chiefs and the sheriff and a number of different stakeholders to come down to City of Federal Way. We shut the door and talked about real-time gang intelligence about who these players are. Now, I was a prosecutor for 19 years, and one of the things, does everybody remember Norm Mailing, the legendary King County prosecutor, who was just a great person? We used to have one of the highest car theft rates in the country. We had at one point, about in 2005, we had about 15,000 car thefts per year in King County. And within just a few years, we dropped that number literally in half. And that's because he started CTI. He liked his initials, and he had all these he was a groundbreaking prosecutor. That was the Car Theft Initiative. I'm talking to you about this because there's one lesson that I learned in watching Norm address this issue, and that's that a very small number of offenders are committing almost all of these offenses. You take those offenders off the streets and out of the population, and your numbers will drop. And that's what we did with this. We we worked together. We worked with the feds. We worked with the King County Sheriff's Office. We worked with intelligence sharing, and we identified high-impact gang offenders. We found out whether they had warrants. We found out where they were. We went out and got them off the streets. And so that's something that I'm very proud of, that we worked very collaboratively on. Thank you very much. So 2 years ago, you may recall that we had that rash of homicides where we had one individual, we believe, committed 4 of those homicides and rattled this community and rattled this region. As a result of that, that individual is in custody in another county, and we're working very hard right now to bring those charges before the King County Prosecutor's Office. And I can't say any more than that, but we're working on that every day to make sure that we hold that one individual accountable. But what came as a result of that our community came together, and we had 500 people come down to City of Federal Way for that special session. And we created with the help of the council and staff, the VPCSC, the Violence Prevention Coalition Steering Committee. And they did great work. And I want to thank Councilmember Kopang as the chair of the Public Works Committee. I want to thank Yarden Weidenfeld, my senior policy advisor and former co-worker at the King County Prosecutor's Office. And I want to thank all those Violence Prevention Coalition folks that came together, made a number of recommendations. And I don't believe in having task forces just to have task forces. They came out with 10 recommendations. We've implemented them, and we're working our way through those to make sure this is a safer community. And if you want to know the details about that, shoot me an email, and we'll get those to you. When I first became mayor, we had 126 officers. We are on the verge now, once we accept this 5 COPS grants, to be 136. We had actually gone all the way down to 123 officers, and that's not acceptable for a community our size, and that's what we're trying to work on. And that's what all this budget discussions is about, is to make sure that you have the requisite services and the protection in your community. All right. We've got a number of new businesses, and you've seen them around town. I am told by our Economic Development Director, Tim Johnson, that that available retail space in the City of Federal Way is at 5% or less. We have filled up the retail spaces in the city, and we've got Diagnose Tech, Mod Pizza, Korean Broadcasting Service, and Telecare. We've got quite a number of things happening. One of the big things that are going to happen in this city in July, if we've got the Special Olympics of North America, in large part coming to Federal Way. It'll be in the Puget Sound region. There's going to be a great big grand opening and the opening ceremonies at the University of Washington in the first week of July. But many of the events are going to be here in Federal Way at our softball fields, at our soccer fields, and I encourage you to come down and learn more about it. We'll make sure we get more information out there so we can really support that. We've been planning on this for years, and it's going to be a great event for Special Olympics. We've been working on certain city initiatives, homelessness. We've just put together a 31-member homelessness committee, and I'm not going to, I want to get to hearing you guys talk and listening to you. We have put together a homeless committee. What we did last year was put together HMCI, which is the Homeless Mothers and Children Initiative, to address the most urgent needs. And I want to thank one of our co-chairs, Deputy Mayor Honda, and one of our great volunteers in this community, Sherry Edwards, who co-chaired that. And we were able, with the help of Yarden Naaman Church, New Hope Church, and Rick Miller and his wife opened up a location, an emergency location for homeless mothers and children to make sure that children were not sleeping in cars. But now it's time to turn the page and address that comprehensively. And we've got some very dedicated volunteers in our city to address the vexing and multi-layered, multi-issued, complicated issue of homelessness. We are making sure that the first thing we do is, while we are cleaning up encampments, and I want to go forward, that's where we were at. That location is off Pack Highway, right off where the Burger King was. That was about 2 years ago. And when we started this initiative, the Homeless Encampment Cleanup Initiative, there was a series of fires and a series of encampments around our city. We had well over 30 of these encampments, and many of them were not occupied. So we had a huge fire north of Steel Lake at 304th, just north of Steel Lake at about 304th, and that wooded area off Pack Highway. And we had probably 5 or 6 acres of this type of just debris, pulled out cars, hundreds of shopping carts. The same thing was happening down on 336th across the street from the multi-service center. And just last summer, I marched in 20 people from the city, and I directed our staff to say, we are going to have this cleaned up. And within a couple of months, it's absolutely pristine, and we've got that cleaned up. But that's just part of it. There's a humanitarian piece of this as well, and we need to keep in mind these are our brothers, our sisters, our daughters, and we need to. There's a compassion element, but allowing this to continue is not compassionate to anyone. And that effort, we probably cleaned up at least several dozen of these homeless encampments, and that's thanks to our the task force that we put together to address that. Airport noise. Go ahead and take a look at all that there. There's a lot going on in this issue. We've hosted a regional forum. I put together a task force. We're waiting on that report that should be forthcoming. We originally thought it was going to be done in March, but it's going to be done probably in May now. We've got a dedicated group of professionals that are working on the real issue of airplane noise because it affects our daily life. But what we want to do as well is we want to be thoughtful. We want to be strategic. It's multi-layered, but ultimately at the end of the day, you need to be able to sit in your home, open your door, and have real conversations on days like this. And the air traffic in our region is going to increase by 40% in the next 20 years. So it's actually a startling. So we're working on a number of different levels. I've talked with our congressman, and we've gotten a study there. There are a number of different studies that are going on, number of different regional committees, and those efforts are ongoing, and we'll keep you in fact, actually, Yarden was at a meeting last night, late into the night, on the START committee, which is right there, the CTAC advisory stakeholder group. But we don't want to get lost in process, and I despise process for the sake of process. The key thing is we need to be strategic, and we need to use our time effectively and make sure our voice is heard loud and clear. Okay, now the most important part of the evening. We want to hear your comments, and this is the line right here. If for some reason we'll ask everybody to queue up here or to line up right here. If anybody has maybe some walking issues, we can bring the microphone to you if you absolutely need us to. Just raise your hand and we can take care of that. But you guys, let's go ahead, let's line up, and let's get started. Jack?
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
my name is Jack Sharlock. I'm the fella that started the petition, the referendum for the 7.75 utility tax. I was standing on the corner with a sign that said,
Jack, turn the microphone. Actually, Jack, hold on for a second.
how about if I do so? I'm gonna take over.
That'll work too.
This one right here.
All right, after you, Jack.
I'm the guy that stood on the corner with a 26% tile increase, I said, in utility tax. People thought I was crazy. What are you doing with that? Well, I started it. I didn't know what I was doing. I learned an awful lot. Looking at the council, they said they're short of money. If they're short of money, when they put the utility tax on asking for it, why didn't they have a cap on it? Why didn't they also designate that money if it's 7.75, specifically to police, which I hear is a shortage, parks, or public works? So when I started the petition, we failed. We only had 3,000. I am disappointed in the city because under his administration, it used to be 60 days to collect signatures. We had 30 days to collect signatures. So we're playing against the house, you might say. So after we turned it in, we sent another little statement to him and said, if the number of signatures found to be insufficient, the petitioners have 10 additional days. Well, they came back to me and they said, under their RCWs, ordinance imposing a business and occupation tax. Now, are you trying to tell me you want to put a business and occupation tax on top of the business community as well?
All right.
That's number one.
Okay.
My second point, when you bought the property, the Target property, it was valued at $5.2 million and you spent $8 million. So you got $3 million more than you spent. Then you, instead of taking a bond, you went to a bank and you borrowed the money. And we've been cranking on, what, $123,000 a year. So now you're at what? In interest without any principal, you're at about $500,000. You just re-signed another 3 years, and if that carries on, you're going to be looking at about $1 million in interest. So I guess, where's the shortage? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jack. And Jack, thank you very much for your passion and for make sure, what we want in our government. We want people out in our community who are passionate, who stand up and gather signatures. They gathered 2,952, if I'm not incorrect, and it showed a tremendous amount of work and effort, and the voice of the public. The voice of the public matters. There's just a couple things I need to correct. We did not change any laws with regard to the referendum. The days that were part of that are part of state law. Our city attorney and our city clerk addressed that. They had 30 days, according to state law, to gather the signatures, and there is no 10-day element. So I've been looking at, of course, I watch Nextdoor. I think Nextdoor is a great platform, and I read all this, and it's just the only thing I think, one of the things that are a challenge is sometimes misinformation that's out there. It's 30 days. That's the law. We didn't change anything. It's state law. It's under the RCW. So we appreciate the signature gatherers. We're hearing loud and clear, but nothing has changed in regard to the amount of time for signature gatherers. Now, in regard to the Target property, in my opinion, and time will tell, and reasonable minds can differ, and that's okay. I actually think one of the most important strategic decisions that has ever happened in this city was the city's purchase of the Target property. Now, we could disagree about that. But your 4-acre park would have never happened had we not bought Target property. What would have happened, and what has happened in our community for the past 40 years, long before we were incorporated, is this urban sprawl without any sort of centralized planning. And that's why we're having to carve out a downtown right now. So we can agree to disagree, but the purchase of that, there was actually another purchaser that was going to take these, the individual that owned the property where the Outback Steakhouse is. They paid $12 million cash for that property, and they were on the verge of buying that old Target property. Now, I want you to imagine, what the part of the problem in this community is the fact that all those properties in our downtown the last 30 or 40 years have been landlocked, and nothing has happened. That's why your downtown failed. Your city stood up to make sure that we can take control of our destiny. And that's exactly what we're doing to make sure that we can have a UW Federal Way in our downtown, that we can have a performing arts and event center, that we'll have a hotel. What we did not talk about tonight is there's going to be a Hilton product hotel right next to the Performing Arts and Event Center, right at the top of those staircases, within a walking distance of a sound transit light rail. And all this, when you look back on this, you're going to see that this is the beginning, the turning point of the creation of a destination in your city instead of what has been the past. So anyway, please, come on up.
I'm Mayor Farrell. I'm Cynthia Nero. You and I met some time
Yes.
ago, way back. But I have just a couple of things to bring up. One is really positive. Going to what the police chief was saying about what goes on with teenagers and our kids and so much violence. I moved here in 2004. My grandson was a special ed student because the police department was actually on his education plan, his IEP, as it used to be called. He was able not only to have a different view as a young Black kid of the overall police authority, so to speak, but happy to say because of the Federal Way School District and willing to work with the police department, now he's a junior at Evergreen State College, which was something nobody ever thought was going to possibly happen. So I think a lot of it is image, seeing cops walk around, with their guns in their holsters is one thing. It could be considered a deterrent. But seeing them in more of an everyday classroom, this is who we are, this is who you are situation, I think would benefit a lot of kids. In fact, I know it would benefit a lot of kids. Okay, that's that kudo. Yeah. The other thing is, I'm trying to figure out why it is that we don't have any viable food trucks here in the city of Federal Way. And I mean to the extent that other cities of this size have, why King County it continues to be allowed to have so many permit rules, regs, all of which force that money that would be spent into Seattle with a smidgen into Renton. Nothing comes here. I don't understand why, if the Federal Way School District could file a suit against the state and get, proper funding for special ed. This happened 04, 05, somewhere in there. I don't understand why the city of Federal Way can't buck up against King County in saying, look, we know how to have a clean kitchen. I mean, how many restaurants are here, that are functioning and working and so on? But this might be something also meaningful to this college group that you're planning on bringing here. Not everybody has the money to go and sit in a restaurant when you're in college, but you can grab a snack off of a food truck and the labor that offers to the city. So I'm trying to find out why we're not looking harder at King County's health department regulations as it pertains to food trucks here.
It's a great idea, and I know that food trucks are very popular in certain communities, certainly like in Tacoma or actually, Kathy, can we make sure we get Cynthia's phone number and make sure we follow up? All right. We're going to follow back. I'm going to have Brian Davis with Community Development follow back up with you, and that's a good thought on special events. At the chamber, or actually the market, or Touch a Truck, which are coming up. Some of the big events. We'll have those on special events. But we'll look in that and get back to you. All right, Betty Davis. Betty Thomas.
Okay. My name is Betty Taylor, and I notice the people that are here. But when the mayor asked he said that your city wants to hear from you.
You want to turn around?
Oh, okay. He said, okay. Now this is what he said, and I'm gonna repeat it. He said your city wants to hear from you. Okay, and then when he said that, he's expecting the citizens to get up and basically, what is on your mind? Why are you here? Are you here to just sit and look? No, he wants your comments. But when there's three people that get up and know that you guys have something on your mind, this is now the time, because we're not going to see you at no city council meeting. This is your time. So use it wisely. Okay, so, but I ain't through yet. Oh, you're not? No, I just got it. Okay, so what I wanted to say was that I wasn't through, but what I wanted to say was that, I was thinking about National Day of Prayer, and I was thinking about the date is May 3rd. And this is a big thing. This is a big thing for the city of Federal Way. And we are having it at Family Life Christian Center. But that's a small place. It is a small place, and we are a city of over 90,000 people, and that is a small place. And when I look at Tacoma and how they're having a National Day of Prayer at the Shaney Stadium, and that's a big place. And I'm thinking about the PAC and the Performing Arts Center. That's a big place. And I'm thinking about how we used to have breakfast at the mall. I mean, we had food. We had eggs, we had pancakes, we had sausage and coffee and juice and water. And we ate. And we showed up and we showed out. Can we just do that again? I mean, would we like to do it again?
Let's give him a round of applause. We'll do it, Betty. So, there is actually a National Day of Prayer. You mentioned it, and I was actually talking to the pastors about this. I filmed a message at City Hall, and they came by, And I was talking to him about the breakfast, but I didn't want they had already started planning their event. So I didn't want, I was going to start a city event for National Day of Prayer, but I didn't want to step on their toes and impinge on their event. So maybe next year we'll get everybody all together for that first Wednesday in May, and we'll have a National Day of Prayer gathering here at Federal Way. We'll find a big location. Thank you, Betty. Appreciate it, sir.
Yeah. Hello, Mayor. I'm Brian Campbell. I just have a few things. I heard you say you want more community and a safer community. So I'm hoping to give you some ideas to make that happen. And one of them is, I heard Huang say something about the safes, guns belong in safes or hips, but then you're contradicting that by giving away trigger locks. That doesn't seem to keep a gun in a safe or a hip.
You want to run through them all, and then I'll have Chief say a few words.
No, yeah, sure. That's just one of them. I know there's a big issue too with the marijuana grow operations.
Yeah.
And the Attorney General actually got involved recently. I don't know if you saw that.
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if our city is also taking similar action that California did.
Well, I think. Are you done?
That's one of them.
Okay. Got any more?
Yeah. There's
Okay.
plenty more.
Keep them coming. I won't forget mine.
Okay, you're talking about the traffic and all the traffic lights
Yeah.
and reducing the traffic, public works and whatnot.
Yeah.
Are we looking at the possibility of roundabouts and traffic circles similar to the campus over at Weyerhaeuser?
Right.
Okay. We also have, I challenge you for this one.
You're gonna have to help me keep track of these. All
Okay,
right, go
good,
ahead.
because I challenge you on this one. To make this a little safer here and more community-like,
Yeah.
try walking between 320th and Hoyt Road 711 to Green Gables Elementary School.
I did. And actually, so I walked, I hit another issue here. So I was actually on Hoyt at 325th and walked up to 320th. And I was very concerned for my safety. And,
Right.
and I'm a full grown man, and I'm like, that immediately went back and talked to Marwan about, we really need to make sure that area right there off Hoyt on both sides is sidewalked. Now we've got a sidewalk priority process, but we've got to make sure that, if I had I've got a 10-year-old son, but I would not let him cross Hoyt to go over to Green Gables. And it is, when you're walking on that pathway.
So what's needed to enable him
it's
to
a
cross?
prioritization issue. We're talking about millions of dollars, and we're talking about where other locations, there are certain locations. So I'm working my way through. That's a priority for me, to make a priority for our city, to make sure that area is safe, because it isn't. And when people try to walk on Hoyt, it's just not safe, especially on the east side of the road there as you're northbound. Frankly, both sides. You got a little bit more side as you're heading southbound on the
Right,
west side.
and that is one of the deepest paths in the dirt that
Yeah.
I've seen in Federal Way.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of foot traffic that's very unsafe right now.
And you've got kids that are walking over to utilize those fields. So that's high on the priority list. What was your second issue? The marijuana grows. I know the chief talked about this. We've got foreign nationals buying houses in Federal Way. And we've probably got about 20 to 25 of those houses that have been purchased in our community. And we are working on, I can't get too far into it, but we are all over this. And what we're working on right now is it's a complicated process. We're all over it. We're investigating it. Some of the folks here that are aware of this, and their neighborhoods that are aware of it. When I knocked on doors last year in this area, I heard it. I walked by several of them. Let me just tell you, your police department is aware of every one of them, and we're working it. And one of the things we want to do, and we've disrupted a few. We had actually one right around the corner from here, and that person, as soon as they got booked, got released the next day. And so what we want to do is make sure that when we interdict in one of these locations, that we don't just arrest that one individual who's come here from New York State, who's a foreign national, and arrest that person for one day. No, we want the house. If somebody is using a house for a grow operation, we want to take the house. That means we got to build a case. That means we got to do it right. And so we want to make sure that's what we're working on. And so I probably said too much about what we're up to right now, but I just want to let you know we're all over it. And that's something that we're intimately aware of. So if the takeaway from this is, you guys, The takeaway is if you see something suspicious in your neighborhood, that you think if the lights, if people are never home, if a house is sold, if you've got suspicious activity, if you've got vans, if you've got the smell of marijuana, call us. We will have our detectives, methodically take all this information down, get probable cause. But the game, or none of this is a game, but the goal is to take these houses from the individuals who will just bring somebody else. Interdicting on that one person isn't doing it. So that was the issue. Chief, there was the issue about locks, on trigger locks. And is that inconsistent with your message about safes?
Yeah, that's not what I meant. You can go to my safe and I got slide lock, cable on it, and it's in my safe. Now, my wife might be able to access the safe, but I don't want her touching the weapon at all. So I'm going to stick to what I said. Basically, it should be in a safe or on your hip.
All right, you got one more?
2 more real quick.
All right.
I know. But,
okay.
One of them, the stats that you had were great with the crime reduction, but I'm assuming that it doesn't also account for the reduction in reports of crimes.
People tend, I know, I got it, Chief. People tend to report, I spent probably 2.5 years in homicide at the King County Prosecutor's Office, but my last assignment there was in car theft, and I did it for the last year I was there at the Regional Justice Center. I filed cases, prosecuted cases, tried them. And I can tell you that people tend to report the theft of their car. People tend to report a burglary. And I really think that what we're talking about are reportable crimes that people are, and those are what are, taking into consideration. We're talking quality of life crimes, which are burglary. If somebody burglarizes your house, forget about statistics. You have been invaded and it's a crisis. And the last thing you want to do is have it happen again. Someone steals your car, that's your livelihood. And so that's why we take that very serious. That's why I'm heartened that we're dropping 13%. But from my point of view, that's probably because a few individuals are in prison. And what we need to do is make sure that we interdict, pull those people out of the population so those numbers drop even more.
Good. I have a couple recommendations too for the homeless situation. It's actually the panhandling on the corners.
Yeah.
And I've been to a few cities that have an excellent program where they partner with churches and community groups to campaign to have folks donate to them rather than donating on street corners. I was wondering if we could start something like that here.
Yeah, I'm working on it, and I mentioned this at the State of the City. What was your first name again?
Brian.
We're working on something that Albuquerque, New Mexico started, which was to give work to employ some of these folks, day labor to pick up trash. There's been a huge increase in trash, and I see it too, you guys. On management team meetings on Monday mornings, shopping carts and trash on the side of the road is not acceptable. If you see it, email me. I will take care of it that day. But in regard to this, the homeless issue, Albuquerque started a program a few years ago that I've been studying very closely, and we've been communicating with Albuquerque about finding ways to employ some of these folks that are willing to work, get a couple of dollars in their pocket, clean up litter, and to get them off the street corners. We actually took a step a few years ago about really ratcheting down as much as we could legally on panhandling. But we can't make it illegal for people to panhandle because they have a constitutional right to stand there. So we've marched right up to that line. But we have approached them. One of the things we did when we brought all the faith-based organizations and social service organizations back, we brought them all together. We had about 26 churches represented, and that was in November and in February or January this year. February was the second meeting. And we had like 50 people present at these meetings. And we have actually provided a services, handout. So when we move people out of these encampments or when we approach people that are on the street corner, we make sure they've got these referrals. What we did also as well is it's a fine line between somebody asking for money and a robbery. And when people get very aggressive, that's a crime. When you're approached by your ATM, if they're within 20 feet, that's a crime. And so it's called aggressive panhandling. If you see it, tell us, tell the chief, and we'll watch certain areas. But we can't prohibit or make it illegal for people to beg on the street. All right, thank you very much. And if you've got more information, send me an email. I'd like to hear it. You got some great ideas. All right.
My name is Ron Nielsen, and I've been a homeowner in the Madrona Trails area since 1992. I'm here with a neighbor who's lived across the street from me for 20 years. And like this previous gentleman talked about, the crime statistics are great.
Right.
But my comment for Police Chief Wang is it would be nice to see a police officer another time than when I've been the victim of a crime. I feel like, and I know there's a lot of other issues that go into this, but I feel like an inordinate amount of our police resources are spent in Westway. And we don't see cruisers in our area. We don't have, the only time I've ever had contact with the Federal Way Police is when I'm a victim of a crime or when I've been stopped for speeding. I've lived here for almost 30 years.
Well,
So,
yeah, exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
just saying, it would be nice to see a presence in our neighborhoods in
Very good.
terms of prevention. And then I also have some specific issues with abandoned vehicles in my neighborhood that that my neighbor and I would like.
And that's what happens, actually, these car thieves. And that, you guys, actually, that's what really blew my mind about, let's talk about cars.
So, thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to hit can you tell the chief what neighborhood you're in? And we'll make sure. I know you said the general neighborhood, but I want to follow up with you.
344th and 21st, essentially.
I got it. Okay.
Twin Lakes, Madrona Trail.
I got it. Okay. Well, we'll send more officers that way. If you guys actually think you need more officers in your area, let us know. We'll make sure that's part of, that's what we do. That's the most important thing we do, is to make sure that we've got those kinds of patrols. And that second issue, dumped cars. You know what? That is actually, you would be shocked at actually the guys the individuals who steal cars use them like disposable razors. They will steal a car at a mall in one town and go literally 10 miles, 5 miles down the road, dump the car there and steal the car right next to where they parked. And they'll do that over and over and over and over. So one of the things they'll do is they'll dump them in your neighborhood. If you see a car that's been there too long, call us. Call the chief, email me. I want to make sure everybody, if you see something in your neighborhood, just shoot an email. We'll take care of it. And if it's there too long, it's probably somebody's car that got stolen, and the plates maybe have been changed. And that's where, the ALPR, the automated license plate reader, reads how many plates a day, Chief? About 50,000? So those things are going all the time. So if a plate is stolen, or if it's entered in the system as a stolen, they're going all the time. And so, but if they're dumped in a neighborhood, maybe our ALPR cars don't see them. So let us know. All right, please.
My name is Brenda Colbert, and first of all, I want to let the police department know we do appreciate them. I would like to know, when I'm on next door and they're always bad-mouthing them, saying, well, why aren't they here? Why aren't they here? I thought, your cat's missing. That's not really a priority, but.
We kept our cats inside.
Yes. But my question for the police department is, I've been to Coffee with Cops, and I speak to policemen whenever I see them to let them know that there are people praying for their safety. But why do they let people with expired tabs and faulty equipment, like no brake lights or no headlights? I follow people home to let them know in case they live alone and they don't have anyone that sees their brake lights are out or something, for their safety. If I see a child seat in the back, I'll be sure and tell them in case they get slammed in. The child's the one that pays the price for that. At your next staff meeting, you might just want to bring that up to say, why do you let those go? They stop them and say, got expired tabs, you might want to take care of that. Well, from personal experience from my family, all they do is laugh about it and go, you can't believe what that guy bought today, the excuse I gave him. Unlike me, who has been stopped 36 times and have paid for the freeway all the way up to Kent Des Moines Road, I'm pretty sure. But with that said, my question about the camera, I don't know what you call them, red light cameras or the school zone cameras. Yeah. I understand they take a picture of, trust me, I understand they get the back of your license plate and you go to court and you say, people say that wasn't me, and then they get excused. Now, I got a school zone ticket. Now, I live a half a mile from Decatur. I live 3 blocks from Olympic View. I live a mile from Twin Lakes Elementary, a mile and a half from Sahalee, and a mile from Lakota. I'm in a school zone. I was never able to have children, so I really drive the speed limit through a school zone. The lights were not flashing at Sahalee, and instead of driving 35 like I thought I could. I thought it was weird at the time of day, so I drove 29. I get a ticket for going 29 and 20. While I was in court, the judge let the guy off in front of me who was late for a golf tournament, laughed it off and said, hey, just go enjoy yourself. Then a lady's got a school light zone ticket like I did, and she said, oh, my sister was driving and she lives in New York, and when we lived here 30 years ago, so Holly wasn't there. I thought, well, if you look, can't see the sign, school zone. So then she let her go. And then it was my turn, and he said, well, I knock the tickets usually down to 105, but for you, I'll knock it down to 100. Thank you for the $5. So then the next one up was that same lady with the same sister 2 times in one day, and he let her go both times. I don't understand why isn't the car ticketed? And then if you're the owner of that car, you get the money back from whoever was driving. I don't understand that. And how much money do we make? Do we make money off that, or are we still paying Ohio for it?
No, we make about, Chief, how much income do we get off the tickets? Red light photo enforcement. $3 million gross.
You're welcome. That's part of mine.
All right.
Thank you. I just want to know if we were making money off it.
Thank you for the 100.
Could someone talk to the judge and say, why are you letting off so many people?
You know, my mom got one. It was a couple of years ago. But she passed away 5 years ago. But 5 or 6 years ago, she got one, and she wanted me to go to court with her. I'm like, Mom, I can't go to court. I was a deputy mayor at the time. I'm like, I cannot go to court with you. And then she swore up and down. She stopped at the stop sign, and so we got her a lawyer to go. And then she saw the video, and she goes, oh my God, I didn't stop. Yeah. So yeah, it happens. I think clearly this issue is one of safety, and our judges have tough jobs, and I think they obviously want to
but if we need money, there's a source, and he's just laughing them off. I thought I've been 3 times, and 3 times I walked out disgusted and I never voted for him again. I voted for him once, and that was once too many. Yeah. Thank you for listening.
What was the net on it? You said $3 million gross, nothing to me.
Chief?
What's the net? Thank you.
It's a good question. Thank you. Did everybody hear that? The question was, what's the net on the traffic?
Yeah, I hope you don't hold me accountable here. Can't do the math quick enough, but we do pay about $5,000 per approach. And we have a total of 16 approaches. What I mean by that is each school zone has 2 approaches. We have 4 school zones. And we have 3 intersections, our largest intersections, 320th and Pack, 312th and Pack, Enchanted, and 348. Those are the 3 major intersections. I want to talk about traffic safety a little bit. I told you that the greatest threat to you and our community is really traffic-related matters. We have 4 traffic officers and a lieutenant. We write probably between 10 to 15,000 tickets a year. I can tell you that we don't have enough traffic officers for the volume of complaints that we receive, either through the mayor's office or my office, that we try to address. If we were not issuing those tickets, and I'm telling you, we could use 8 traffic officers. If we weren't doing traffic enforcement, if we weren't using technology, our streets would be absolute chaos. I can tell you that right now. We have about 2,500 accidents a year. Far more citizens are injured in traffic accidents than any other cause. So what I'm telling you is, in fact, as a police chief, we could do more traffic enforcement to keep our streets safe. I know it's never fun to get a ticket or a photo enforcement ticket, but they do calm traffic. They do slow down speed in school zone. It absolutely works. What I like about it is there's no racial profiling, age profiling with this technology. It's precise. It's reviewed by the officer. It don't matter if you're rich, poor, doesn't matter if you're, so it's consistent, but it does slow traffic down.
I just one final point on this. I'd say about 7-8 years ago, I was very much opposed to red light traffic enforcement, both at the intersections in certain areas, because of the automated nature of it and going through Ohio. And I was actually kind of exploring this issue and thinking about it. And my older brother, Phil, and yes, that would make him Phil Farrell, the firefighter, is a firefighter. And he was a paramedic for 10 years. And he used to respond to car accidents. And he's a very funny guy and very, very lighthearted and very fun. I actually brought this issue up with him, and he got very serious. And he said, because he had been in many fatality collisions, he said, people who run red lights kill people. And so while this isn't a money grab, this is about This is about just making sure that people, don't have those kind of fatality accidents. Actually, we've got Tim Burns and then our former mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Tim Burns. I want to talk about an issue that has been simmering, I guess, for a number of years. I first got involved with the city council and started following your actions in 2009 when there was talk about another exit off the freeway. And at that time, there was a study and several options were closed and dismissed, finally coming up with 312th as a prime candidate. And then the citizens threw an uprising, basically, and the city backed off, closed the book on it after paying about $2 million for the study. Now we hear that there's another attempt to bring a freeway exit off at 324th,
right?
Which I think is absolutely ludicrous, especially if you're talking about heading west. That freeway exit will die at either Pack Highway or the Celebration Park. And 6 blocks maybe is what it would gather. And that is absolutely ridiculous. What we need is something that goes all the way through Pack Highway to the west, because the people are not stopping in Federal Way. They're not coming into Federal Way to shop. They're coming home or going to work. So most of the traffic east and westbound is going beyond the city. So let's drop if you're gonna do another exit, do it to the south, come around the city and into the western residential area. But coming off at 312th or 324th just doesn't make any sense. And let's not spend the money on the study.
All right, thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
All right, Jack Dovey.
Yes, a question I have is, as you read about budgets right now, it seems like there's lots of things that are being done, changes, and human services is a pretty big part of our community. You showed great pictures of the homeless camps. And do you anticipate any cuts in the budget for human services for the organizations that are dealing with the people that are starting to fall through, not being able to make their rents or go to the family suppers and things like that? How do you see that affecting the budget?
Jack, thank you. That's a great question. And one of the things is there were out of a certain portion, we were taking a look at certain portions and what comes out. There was about $754,000 that came out of a particular portion of the budget in which human services were there. If memory serves me correctly, about $536,000 were identified toward human services. And one of the things I just instructed Aday and I, our finance director, who's a great finance director, we have emergency feeding program through the multi-service center. We're lucky to have Councilmember Duclos, who was the executive director of the multi-service center. You've got things for sexual assault resource center, support of those advocates. You've got certain things that are really important for domestic violence funding and making sure that people. So that kind of funding, I'm going to fight to protect. There are certain things that are as a community that, and you guys, one of the things is I don't think that there's really, it's so multi-layered and it's so much out there. We're going to actually have a detailed budget presentation, not zero-based budgeting, but pretty darn close. I've been talking to the council. I think it's very important to just open the books up and just go line by line by line. And Linda and Jack have been involved in these budgets for years, and that's what's necessary. We've got great partners on the city council. We've got a great finance chair, a great deputy mayor. And so I just actually wrote an email to council just the other day. I think it was either yesterday or Tuesday, where I wrote an email and said, we're not going to do zero-based because under the statutes, it's my responsibility as mayor to transmit a budget to the council. So I'm not going to abrogate my responsibility to develop a budget. But I'm going to work hand in hand with the council. But I can tell you, Jack, that the short answer to your question is I'm going to do everything I can to protect those human services programs to make sure people do not slip through the cracks. That is our obligation as a community, not just law enforcement, to make sure that people that are right on that cusp and that need that funding. Kids, victims, those kinds of things. I need to make sure we protect that. Okay.
Carol Fraley. Chief, you talked about burglary. That's the only thing that has gone up in the city, according to your stats. What do you account for that?
Even with, the overall crime reduction, we still have some hot spots. So in terms of trend, we are seeing a little more commercial burglaries, particularly in our Sector 2, which is Pack Highway around 336. We're seeing an increase in burglaries there, and really kind of along Pack Highway. So commercial burglary has been trending upward. I would
And
tell
residential, you said.
Residential, I would tell you that when you look at past several years, it's been really trending downward. I think I was telling you that there was a difference of 6.
Your stats up that you showed us it going up.
Yeah, 2%, pretty flat. Difference of 6, but yes, it was up a little. But when you look at several years, our residential burglaries have actually been pretty low or trending down historically, if you look at that.
Do you account any of that to the homeless problem that we have? I know that my husband's lodge is broken into about every other week by a homeless person.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, homeless population is having an impact in crime in our community. Yes.
And most of those homeless, are they opiate addicted?
Many of them are.
Many of them are.
Yet I would say homelessness issue is attributed to opioid crisis.
And have you seen the studies that show that cities that do have marijuana and it's more readily available have lowered their opiate crisis? That people are going off of opiates and onto marijuana, and it's not as addicting. Have you seen those studies?
I have not.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's something to look
good to
into. And Mayor, you speak about development, and it's very important for our city to grow and develop because I liked living here, and we have made that commitment finally. After 20 years, we finally committed to the city. But I'd like to know the cost, and I'd like you to be upfront and honest with us when you talk about the cost. And I'd like, when we're at a council meeting talking about a tax raise, not being informed that you're getting a 7% raise in pay is leaving out information, and that doesn't make me trust you. So I think that if you would tell us exactly how many performances the Performing Arts Center, when they have a performance, how many of them are full? How much does it cost per performance? And are those seats paying for each performance?
Great question. First of all, at the last city council meeting, you mentioned pay raise by the mayor and the council, and the Independent Salary Commission came back about a month ago, about several weeks ago, and we actually put that on the agenda. We were not required to. I put it on the agenda at the last city council meeting. Anybody's welcome to go back and look at the last city council meeting last Tuesday. And
But
I had
not at the council meeting that we were talking about a tax raise. Wouldn't that be nice to know that when you're telling us that you're going
Wasn't
to raise
official
our
yet.
taxes?
It wasn't official yet. It was not
It
going.
wasn't official yet, but it was being discussed, correct?
They were public noticed.
But
Ma'am,
you did not bring it up. You gave us all of this information. You put up all of this information and said there were no alternatives except a tax raise. But a 7% raise for yourself when you mentioned that 2% is going to your public, to your employees.
Okay.
Correct.
I don't have anything to do, and we actually have removed the council and the elected officials from that process. It's the Independent Salary Commission. They were noticed, they were public meetings. I did not attend those meetings. I had nothing to do with those. So what we did is once all those meetings were noticed, I saw it on Nextdoor. I say as soon as when they got their work done, then it would not be appropriate for me to influence that process whatsoever. And I did not influence that process. It is very, very important. And we're not going to play politics with city salaries. So in regard to transparency, we've been very transparent about everything that we've done.
Right. Your staff is getting 2% and you're getting 7%.
I had nothing to do with that. Nothing. So I'm sorry. You know what?
Nothing to do with that.
We are
It's
not.
a failure to provide information.
I disagree.
It isn't. Okay. And can you tell me, when we were raising when we were raising signatures for the petition, I went down to the bowling alley. What are you doing for outside, for businesses? He brings in over 65% of his people come from out of the state, out of the city to the bowling alley. He's going to have to raise his rates because you've taxed his water. And he wasn't even allowed to vote. He couldn't sign the signature because he doesn't live in the city, but he provides tax to this. So how are you helping the outlying businesses besides the downtown development?
We're providing all kinds of, actually, he had issues with regard to the construction issue out in front. So I've actually been to that bowling alley. I frequent that with my family. I go there. We provide any assistance that we can possibly do. But everybody's got to pull their fair share.
What? We all have to pay taxes.
We do.
So do you have any information on the Performing Arts Center and the cost?
We actually just had a
cost?
report. Actually, EJ, would you actually please connect with this person? And we actually just had a report this week about the number of performances, attendance, and all of that. That report was just in Councilmember Duclos' committee in Frederick. That report was just
Would he like
done.
to give it to the entire pub?
We're not going to do that. It's public. If anybody wants that information, you can either ask EJ right there, or you can actually just send me an email, or you can go online, and that information is available on the packets for the finance committee that just had their meeting this week. It's all available online. Sir?
My name is Bob Boren. I've been around Federal Way. Went to Panther Lake and Lakota and graduated Federal Way in 74. I got 4 issues that I want to talk about real quick. One is about marijuana dispensaries. One is about marijuana dispensaries.
Yes.
There are 2, 3, 5 miles around, and I don't know why we don't have them here in Federal Way, because the money's being spent. We're not getting any of the revenue from that, and we don't want people to have opiate addictions. I don't. I've got a piece of steel and 16 screws in my left arm, and I don't want to take hydrocodone or anything like that.
Right.
And the bad people that we were afraid about coming in here are already here. My next issue is about panhandling. I think it's a matter of public safety. If somebody stops and hands out money to somebody who's entering the street, that's, I think, a jaywalking issue, and I think they can be cited.
They can.
Okay.
You're right. So if they step out on the street and they're obstructing traffic, that's when our code kicks in. They cannot be involved. They cannot obstruct traffic. They cannot get out in the middle of the street. They cannot even enter the street. But we can't prevent people from standing there with a sign. We just.
I've got half a dozen signs at home. I went out and did some campaigning, shook your hand at First Avenue and 320th.
Yeah.
And stuff. So I've got them. They do that all the time.
Yeah.
Third, shopping carts. I see the police drive by and people are pushing shopping carts. I think that we should have some sort of ordinance that says that you can't have a shopping cart more than 100 feet from the
So do I.
property. So
Actually, that's a great point. Actually, where's Ryan? Where's our city attorney? Ryan, I've got Ryan, our city attorney, right here working on that ordinance. I actually think it's ridiculous. It has become an epidemic of shopping carts in this community. It makes the city look bad. And one of the things I've got a situation, we've got volunteers with the police department that go around and they pick up with their carts hundreds of these. But the problem is if they do that twice a week, what happens on a Thursday or a Friday when that thing is dumped? One of the things that I personally do when I see a shopping cart somewhere is I immediately tell our public works director, and they'll go pick them up. If I see in a line, even if they're close or even just over the boundary of Federal Way, I'll say, go get those shopping carts. Now, we're working right now on an ordinance that will do exactly that. And they actually need to be, I think the grocery stores need to be incentivized to stop this from occurring because it's junking up our city. And we really need to protect our city. This code enforcement business is very important. So we're all over it. Actually, hey, Ryan, how far out do you think we are in regard to proposing an ordinance to the council?
We're still working out the details of the community development. Probably, I would say a month or 2.
Yeah, so we're talking about a month or 2. Part of it is a matter of, I don't want to take an officer off the street. It's a real tricky thing about whether we're going to have, it's an issue of whether we're going to have volunteers do this. I don't like that idea. I want an actual Federal Way employee to do this. So we've got to figure out which department it comes out of who manages this, but we're all over it.
Okay, well, who would write the citation for the person that's taken that piece of private, or not public property, but privately owned by a store off of their property? That seems to be theft to me.
Yeah, I think that you've got to figure out, here, you're absolutely right, it is theft. The problem is that the grocery stores or the stores are willing to essentially write these off. Each one of these are probably a couple $100 worth of equipment.
I've heard, upwards over $500 for some of these.
What we're working on right now is, what we need to do is, you're right, it is theft, but when we're talking about, are we going to stop somebody, on the street, or if I'm going to have an officer stop that person on the street and cite him for theft, maybe that's a way to go. I actually think the more methodical way to approach this is, we're going to pick up the carts. We're going to notify the stores where they come from. You have 5 days to pick this up. If you want it, it's going to cost you $100. And if you want it, come and get it. If not, we're going to get rid of it. And we're going to clean up all these carts out of our town.
That seems to me that you're pushing the problem onto the victim.
We have
to begin with.
We've got to clean up these carts. And there is actually technology. My wife and I go visit our in-laws, and we go up to U Village every once in a while. And some of the stores up there actually have carts that will not go past a certain point. There is the technology that will prevent it from leaving those stores. These stores are actually, they put the carts out there, and then they get dispersed all over the community. So we have to figure out a way to do this. Well, we'll work some of this. I think you're right, though, that we do need to think about. I've got my former fellow prosecutor here thinking about victim rights and.
You would need the operation of the victim prosecutor.
Right. So we're working on it.
Okay, and then my final point is about transportation.
Yeah.
If our road system were a human body at points of the city, we would be having a stroke or a heart attack. If you try and drive down Highway 99 at 336th, 348th, 356th, people are diverting off of I-5 southbound or northbound to go through the back roads of Federal Way. And if you look at 356th from Highway 99 to First Avenue South, we've got a real pretty intersection there at Highway 99 that snakes down to 2 lanes, and it goes across the Hylobos, and I understand that. And then up to First Avenue, it widens back up to 5 lanes. But we're diverting so much traffic there, it's a nightmare. And I understand we have to cross the Hylobos Creek down there too. But before we make any more expenditures for buildings or sidewalks or ramps for our pretty performing arts center, I think we ought to consider spending that money developing the transportation.
The infrastructure.
To get, there's so much more traffic coming out of the Port of Tacoma in terms of trucks.
Right.
They're diverting, they're coming on Highway 99 northbound and southbound so they can avoid that Fife Curve area, and it's just becoming a mess. So my request is, before we spend any more money on any more capital improvements, let's fix the transportation.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Oh, and one last thing.
Yeah.
I know being a mayor and being city council people and working for the city is a tough job. And I appreciate, all of the elected and unelected officials.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for doing a good job.
Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege. Thank you.
My name is Yolanda Robbins, and I just wanted to first of all thank our police officers for what they do. I'm currently taking the Citizen Police Academy class, and it really is an eye-opener. I mean, I know there's a lot of activity going on, a lot of crime, a lot of homeless, and it is increasing, and it's amazing when you're going to class and when you physically get to talk to each department of what they have to deal with every day. And I know just as a citizen, sometimes you feel like, oh my God, they just broke into my car, nobody's come in to see me. But it's like at the same time, they're like, fires everywhere trying to see which one is more of a priority. And I just really want to thank for what they do. And if there's anything that we can actually do is try to get more cops on the street.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You guys, she and her daughter are at every event that we have in Federal Way in which we need volunteers. They're at the Jingle Bell Breakfast. They're at the 4th of July. Let's give her and her family a big round of applause for all they do for our city. Thank you so much. Every time I go to a community event, I see you guys. So thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Peggy Mosser. I just have a really short personal experience to share how some car thefts can be prevented. When we first moved to Twin Lakes about 10 years ago, we moved into a very small house with a very small garage, and we had 2 cars. So we parked a car in the driveway. One morning we came out and I said to my husband, "Where's the Honda?" He said, "What do you mean, where's the Honda?" I said, "Exactly, where is it?" And it had been removed from our driveway during the night. After that time, which our small garage between the 2 cars, there is about 2.5 feet. And I don't see real well, so parking is a challenge. But we have not had a vehicle stolen since we started parking both cars in our garage.
Right. And thank you. I know, I was just explaining that to my son about how important it is. If you can, get your car into the garage. We try to do that in our household. We do that in our household as well. Sir?
I'm Patrick Pomeroy. I live here in Twin Lakes. I also have the pleasure of being president of the Twin Lakes Homeowners Association. I wish I could share your confidence that you're on top of the grow houses. I get email after email from frustrated, irate homeowners of the Twin Lakes HOA. I tell them to forward your comments and complaints to the police department. They have. They're utterly frustrated. The police do a wonderful job with what they have to work with. It's a priority and allocation of resources. We currently feel that you do not have enough resources. We're told there's 2 officers assigned to the grow houses. Part of the challenge is we have a current King County prosecutor, Mr. Dan, who does not believe in criminal forfeiture. Most of the other counties in the state aggressively go after criminal forfeiture. But what has really driven it this week is 3 of the grow houses are blatantly, during daylight hours, harvesting their product, hauling it out in black garbage bags, and driving away. So a lot of the neighbors here at Twin Lakes HOA, you brought up the comments about what ruins a neighborhood, what increases the value.
Right.
How live next to a grow house.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your service with the Twin Lakes. Let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you. Can you address that? How many officers do we have working this issue? And what about things that are happening?
Sure. We have a special investigations unit. So we have a special investigations unit that has 2 narcotics detectives, 2 gang officers, and a lieutenant. So yes, as far as narcotics, we have 2 detectives. They're actively working. Just yesterday, we hit a house that was selling heroin. So they have a caseload. They continue to work it. But when we're ready to hit the targets, we have access to the DEA team that's in our city, 11 detectives, 2 sergeants from Washington State Patrol. We have a detective signed to that DEA unit as well. And then we have special operations unit. So once we develop probable cause, once we're going to hit, we use our existing detectives, we use our special operations unit, special investigations unit, but working full-time, we have our SIU unit. So it's 4 detective officers and a lieutenant. So one of the things about these marijuana houses, I know there's a frustration. We have a multiple number of these homes, but we prioritize. For example, we decided to hit this house that was selling heroin, because typically those are the type of homes we're having shootings and gun violence, middle of the night, because people are coming all day and night and they get into shootouts. So we do prioritize. One thing I can tell you about the marijuana house, they have no weapons throughout the state. When they get hit, never offer any resistance. So I'm not using that as a basis for prioritizing, but we are working the houses that we talked about. It is a priority for us, but they are carrying a caseload right now. Okay.
Thank you, Chief. I do want, Mr. Pomeroy, let's talk when this is over. I want to get some more detail, and I also want to make sure that we're working together. Come on. And so I do want to say a couple of things. The way Dan Satterberg, the way the King County Prosecutor's Office, even though I'm a former deputy, the way they're prioritizing the cases will have no effect on how we're approaching this. I've instructed the chief that when we book somebody, I don't care if they're just a foreign national that has come through another state and just working the grow and sort of as a pawn for somebody else. We're booking them and we're doing what they call a rush file. When a felony, and I'm not going to get into the weeds here, you guys, but when a felony is referred to the King County Prosecutor's Office, and then somebody's arrested, we can make a request on what they call the form, the super form that we file with that defendant, with that suspect. We check a box, and I've instructed the chief and his people and all of these individuals, when we book somebody into jail for a grow operation, they are instructed to ask for bail, and they are instructed to ask the prosecutors to ask for bail and to ask that individual to be held. Once that occurs, we've got 72 hours to file the case. And that's called a rush file. Yarden and I used to file rush cases all the time at the prosecutor's office. If you don't file within the 72 hours, then the person is released. And there's a whole drawer full of cases. I was in the filing unit, the felony filing unit at the Regional Justice Center for about a year, and there's a whole drawer full of unfiled cases. That is not going to happen here. At least what we're going to do, we're going to do our part. If if the King County Prosecutor's Office doesn't want to rush file these cases, it won't be because we haven't turned the case in within 72 hours. We're going to ask they be held, and we have, and we're going to get those cases and work what they call a felony workup right away. But what we're talking about really is we're talking about the low-level individual who's just maintaining the grow versus the individual who bought the house and is having those people processed through. Now we could, and we actually sat down with a couple of individuals that are present here tonight. We could go out and book all these guys and interdict that right away. But what we're concerned is it would just start right back up again. What we want to do is grab the house. But essentially, I think that essentially what we want to do is it's a balancing act. And that's what the chief of this comment, Mr. Pomeroy, is very instructive. And we're going to have a conversation when this is over, I hope, and we're going to continue that information gathering. But it is about, if you see it, you've got to tell us, and we'll make sure that when the time comes, we get that probable cause and we go after it. All right. Thank you. Let's talk. Sir.
Hi, my name is Mark Hanish. I live over in Madonna Trails also. As all of you know, our properties, Federal Way is growing. Our properties are becoming more and more valuable. The average house in Seattle now is, I think they said tonight, $970,000. So our area is becoming very desirable. Our population is growing. What I've noticed over the last several years is issues with code enforcement with homes. We've had abandoned cars. We have junk cars. We have, hopefully I'm not offending, we have people that have 4-foot-high grass. There's us that we keep our houses up. We maintain them. They're valuable pieces of property. So what I'd like to know is in Federal Way, is there something is available to homeowners, neighborhoods, where we can have people from code enforcement from the city and meet with them and have them come out and literally walk and say, look at this.
Right.
Look at this. Yeah. Look at this. Because at one time, and the police did a great job, I had a drug house on one side. I had an abandoned house on the other side.
Right.
And trying to get somebody in here to take care of this was literally impossible until they actually showed up with about 7-8 officers and took everybody away. But it's important as, you know, our community is growing and thriving, that we pay attention just not to the downtown area, but our homes, our streets, our neighborhoods, and make sure that they're kept well, and that we look at how it's growing.
This is where the battle is taking place. Or I have to say it, neighborhood by neighborhood. I actually think code compliance is one of the most important things we do in a city to make sure that we do not let our neighborhoods digress. I called up Brian Davis, our great community development director. He's going to talk about this. And what I would strongly suggest is whoever has a code issue, come up, get Brian's phone number, get his email. That's the most important thing. Get it and just feed us information. You guys, when we get an email, we immediately act on it as best we can. And so, yeah, we're doing, one of the things I did when I first became mayor is I actually asked for the city to be gridded up. And I wanted a code enforcement person responsible. We used to have a system, and Jack, is Jack still here? Jack Dovey? Oh, Jack and I used to talk all the time about, he and I both did not think it was fair that we had a code, a complaint-driven code enforcement. I thought that was awful, that people, in order to get action, had to basically dime out their neighbor. And it really put people in a very awkward position. It's incumbent upon us. And when now in our code enforcement, I'm kind of stealing Brian's thunder here. All right. But now one of the things we do is if they go into a neighborhood and they see a washer and dryer in someone's driveway or in the middle of their lawn or a car parked in the middle of their lawn, we're not doing that. That's not going to happen. If we've got grass that's 4 feet tall, or we've got rat infestations, garbage, and you can look over and see in your neighbor's yard that there's a bunch of garbage piled up, let us know. We will take care. That's what we do. That's what we have to do. Because I'll tell you this, and this is what, I live here. I'm raising my little boy here with my wife, Wendy. It's like once that takes root and our property values start to fall down, it's over. It's time to move. And that's not going to happen. We have to fight. This is a bare knuckle brawl to protect our neighborhoods. That's why we're doing this. That's why we got to make sure that we do this. And we've got to make sure, honestly, and I'm disappointed that Mr. Sherlock is gone now, because I was going to say, that's what this is about. That's why we're fighting so hard to get extra revenue, because we want to make sure that we've got the personnel in place in code enforcement to protect your city. This isn't just about police. It's about code enforcement. It's about service to you. So,
yeah, just to add on to what the mayor said, if there's some hot spots, so to speak, of properties that you see has some obvious maintenance issues, give me a call and we can definitely do some outreach. For specific instances, the city's website, if you go to it, there's a spot at the top that says, "How do I?" And then there's a drop down that says "File a complaint." And we get those all the time, and we're Johnny on the spot to address those issues. So.
Are those just for police matters?
No, any complaint. No, it's for what happens is you send it in. Yeah, so his question was on the website when there's where you file a complaint, if it's a marijuana grow or if it's high grass. I mean, I'm sorry to continue that pun, but the marijuana grow, it goes to the mayor's office, I believe, and it's routed to whatever department is responsible for it. So if it's a police matter, it goes to police. If it's code enforcement, it goes to enforcement. So it doesn't matter what your issue is. It's a great portal for the public to submit their concerns. There's an option to remain anonymous if you want to. Yeah, and it's difficult sometimes. Right. So it's difficult sometimes if the person receiving the complaint kind of narrows it down as to, they're looking into their backyard to get a complaint. They probably have a good idea of who is the complainant. So that is a tricky balance. But like the mayor said, we try not to just react to complaints. The city's divided up into 3 sectors. We're fortunate to have 3 code officers. When I first started, we're just building that up. We had 0 a few months before I started. We now have 3, so it's doing a lot better than it has been.
But if we'll go into a neighborhood for one complaint and they see the other, we act on those. And I just for our folks, if you see that out there, thank you. If you see that out there in obvious code compliance, we have got to make sure our neighborhoods don't fall, because once the neighborhoods get to a certain point, it's over. Go ahead.
So just to follow up on that, is there a process that's in place to maybe help some of these people? Like, I had the same incident happen across the street from me, but they're heroin addicts and they've got garbage and crap all over the place. And I've called the city and complained about it. And because a lot of their garbage is behind a fence, there's nothing that you can do. And it's creating rats at my house and things like that. And they don't have the money to clean it up. So they get cited and they have so many days to clean up their crap and they don't have the money to clean it up. So it sits there. So what happens when they don't have the money to pay for it?
So if they're put on notice at that point, if they don't If they can't clean it up, then it proceeds to the next level of prosecution, so to speak, where we'll try and help them as best we can, but at some point they need to do their part to clean up their own messes. And so we'll take it to the next level, whether that be fines or court prosecution or a combination of the two.
If you could think, before you leave, please get this address over to Brian. And before you leave, same thing. Just make sure we'll act on it right away. They're called Citizen Action Request, or CARs. And then they don't close. They pop up on a sheet every Monday when we have the management team where I meet with your directors, with our directors. They don't close until we have like dotted the I, crossed the T. Go ahead, Mary.
Well, I'm Mary Ailes, and I live in the Palisades region, and we're kind of middle-income homes. And what's happening to us is the houses are sold, they go to rentals. And then trying to get a hold of property managers is a lot of fun, trying to get things straightened out. So I don't know what you can do about that, but I will say I do have a complaint.
Yeah.
I am tired of being chastised by my political leaders about being concerned about budgets. I mean, we, on a personal level, have to manage our budgets. We have, and I was really dismayed to see that we didn't get to vote on this tax because I think it was rushed through. What happens to those of us that live in Palisades that already pay an excise tax, or whatever you want to call it, to Tacoma? That wasn't discussed. There was no limit was discussed. No cap was discussed. It was pretty much rushed through, which I was hoping a citizen vote would have given it time to discuss that. Now, nobody denies if you need more money, you need more money. But for the first time, and I've never objected to taxes. That's how we get our roads. That's how we keep our parks. But I do object to being chastised for the concern, and I'm hearing this repeatedly, and I'm getting and I'm so tired of hearing transparency. I'm sorry, but most of us work. We can't be at every meeting,
right.
And we're not going to look at every blessed site to try to piece all this together. So it's like where Hero was 2 years ago or further back, you're a hero if you rat somebody out. Right. Well, it might be a public obligation, but you're not a hero. So transparency, and all we need is clear definitions. I mean, the bucket presentation was nice. I was there.
Good, thank you.
But all we need is definitions. Okay, I now understand what REIT money is. I now understand how you can use money. And it's the same as all of us have worked.
I know.
And I will say that I know it's not you, and I know it's not the city council. It's an independent committee, but I work public relations. And this is really bad public relations to take a raise when everybody else is told they have to pay more. So, I really want you to look at the bottom line. And yes, that means some of us might have to back off a bit and wait a little bit, but things like parks and all are important to us. But don't keep chastising us. I mean, my husband retired 5 years. We expected, we lived 20, 30 years, that our budget would get tighter, but not in 5 years. And it's already happening. So we'll be fine, but what about the people who can't eat? What about the ones who can't pay for their medicine? Concerns me. So please, it's a really bad PR move, if nothing else, for these raises to happen now. You can't ask us for money and take more yourself.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mary. Appreciate it. The independents, thank you. I can tell you that in regard, again, it's the independent salary committee. I don't have any control over it. And I think that what they want to do is remove the politics of it and remove that positioning. Let me say also that we actually talked about the Lake Haven, about the excise tax on Lake Haven a year and a half ago in our budget. It was part of my budget, and I made sure that I was very clear in the proposal in 2016 for this 2-year budget. I said, please don't do the transportation benefit district because ST3 is going to pass, and people's car tabs are going to probably triple or quadruple, and I wouldn't do that. And so I proposed this excise tax on Lake Haven because they're the only utility that, and we can debate all day long about that, but it was a $900,000 revenue stream to the city for the budget. We put the TBD in, the transportation, the license fee, and then we got 2 months into the next year, and then because people were upset about their car tabs, and which was almost identical. We pulled that out without making corresponding cuts. Well, guess how much the shortfall is? That much. So that's how we got here. We didn't get here overnight. And what we're trying to do is make sure that we've got the resources in place to provide service, and where we don't have, and we've cinched up as hard as we can, but the gears are starting to slip, and a lot of those things, a lot of those structural shortfalls have been in place for a long time. And so while other individuals, and I don't believe we should go out for a property tax or anything like that. So we're trying to find ways. And this is talking about the average rate on somebody is not a 20%, 26% increase. It's about a $4 per home, excise tax. It's not what I have. It's not what I want to do. It's what we have to do for this community to make sure we've got needed services. Thank you, though, Mary. And I think you're right you're right about everything you said, because yeah.
And, you say it's happening a long time, but I've been to meeting after meeting where I've been told everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. And then all of a sudden, oh, it's not. So let's, don't throw transparency out there. I'm a little tired of it.
All right. Thank you, Mary. Sir.
My name is Jack Kowalski, and just a few observations.
Yes, sir.
You and I have spoken a time or two, and you never have come and gotten your Federal Way moles out of my yard.
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
Okay, but if I'm going to build a house, I'm certainly going to plan ahead to put a sidewalk or some way to enter the house. So number one, I think the center that was built down there, which I think is going to be a plus for the city, there was no transparency. There's a whole bunch of hiding a bunch of stuff under the rug. And let's bring it out and build this stuff later when these idiots that are paying the tax aren't paying attention. That's one observation. The next observation is I have a certain amount of income, okay? I really want a Lamborghini. My income does not allow me to get in a Lamborghini. I have to live within my income, or I have to go out and produce more income, or I have to go over and grab one of those guns and steal it from somebody. Taxes are just about like stealing. So what is the problem that the city of Federal Way can't live within its budget? And certainly the city of Seattle and the great legislature down there who just stuck us with all kinds of stuff.
I know.
Now, let me tell you something, Mr. Mayor. You're the one guy I can get a hold of and hold accountable. There's not much I can do with what's going on in Olympia or Satterberg and all of that clown act in Seattle. So I am really upset that we continually get hit on because you guys come out with a gun and say, give us more money. And then you're going to take a pay raise and you're saying, oh, it's not me. You know what you could do? You could say, I decline it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Jack. Okay, so a couple things. The staircase in the downtown area, so that was something that is not necessary per se for the Performing Arts and Event Center. Nothing that was never contemplated in that process. We have access to $1 million a year in infrastructure money to make sure that we improve our downtown. So we can leverage $1 million a year from state money and actually and from King County grants and the like. So what has really been the idea of the staircase, which is not coming out of city money and not coming out of operating funds, is to activate the entire area. And that was, frankly, Jack, was my idea. Probably, I think I forget exactly when I started really talking about this 30-foot wall that was really breaking up our downtown and preventing the kind of walkability in the downtown. And there are certain instances where you can really create a place and create a true downtown. In regard to, here's what's happening what's happening right now, and this is what's happening. When the Initiative 747 was passed, our ability to increase dollars over the years, our buying power has shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. What has not shrunk, and what 75% of the money that our city government spends is in regard to our labor costs. And those are going up and up and up. The other thing is we got hit for $600,000 increase by the SCORE jail for a number of different things because we're trying to lock people up because of it's based on average daily population. It's complicated. But we got hit with $600,000. And there were other things that are going on. Next year, healthcare costs are going to rise $700,000 for the city. So there is a structural imbalance in place where we're trying to, and it was, I've talked about this, we've talked about this as a community to make sure. What's happening right now is that we are actually losing people. And what's going to happen, and if somehow or another this did not go through, or if we're not able to keep track, what'll happen is we'll start be a city in decline, and every budget cycle we'll start dropping down number of employees, and we'll start having our employees head for the door. We've lost 3 or 4 employees this year because they're going to Auburn, King County, who pay $14,000 more per year. And so we're losing good engineers. Actually, Brian Davis has lost 3 people, his department, just this calendar year for people that are going to nearby jurisdictions. What happens? We lose good people. Now, we opened up one of our inspector positions, and we had it, and the city of SeaTac is offering $8,000 more for the exact same job. So we had a person that just said yes to us, but then a day later says, sorry, no, I'm going to go somewhere else. So what's going to happen is your level of quality, your quality level of service is going to drop and drop and drop. Your number of officers are going to drop. The people working for you are going to drop because we're not keeping pace. We have got to keep pace, and that's what it's about. And so we're being as transparent as I can. I'm not going to politicize the pay raise. Mary, I know it doesn't look bad. I know it doesn't look good, but I'm not going to play politics with it. We're not going to do that. But it was on the front page of the paper because we put it on the agenda and made sure that it was on the agenda. But the Independent Salary Commission is going to do what they do. And that's the way it has to be. We cannot play politics with this stuff. Cheryl, did you want to say something? And thank you, Jack, for your comments. We have, how many co-compliance officers do we have, Brian? We've got 3. So I think, Mary, I want to get back to something that Mary said because I think it's really important. And anything that I say, I'm very passionate about our city and about our future. And everybody is trying to do is make sure that we have a city that we can be proud of. But I recognize that, in essence, and what Jack was talking about is that the taxation of itself is a coercive act, and we're trying to provide services to that. We're doing everything we can to make sure the gears do not slip. And what keeps me up awake at night is the gears slipping, and it's being a city on the decline. That's what I'm worried about. And so I think we're faced with these unexpected expenses that put us at $854,000. But that's to get us just to the point of being even. So that's what we're working on. But I work for you. Your comments are incredibly important. But Mary, at the heart of what you're saying is people need to be able to come to their government to strongly express disagreement without being lectured to. And it's my job not to do that. And I promise not to.
We are intelligent human beings.
I know you
We
are.
want to be talked to like that.
I know. Thank you, Mary.
And it's just, a lot of it is, if we don't work the departments, we don't know. But as
Yeah.
soon as we get the all we want is the definition. We don't want to learn.
Right.
And we don't want to be told that we're too dumb to know.
And I want to go back to there was no deep plan to add to say at some point, oh, we need a staircase, but we're not going to talk about that yet. The staircase was my idea, and it was all mine. And because I want to create a downtown. When you guys have family that come from out of town, I don't want you to have to take them in through the back way. When we have businesses that come here and want to invest here, I want to take them downtown, and I want to take, just like we do if we take people from out of town, we take them to Seattle, we take them to the Space Needle, we take them to, where we take them out to a nice restaurant. We want a city we can be proud of. And what was happening in our downtown was this urban blight that was ridiculous. In 2014, after we just even made that temporary use of the park, and I know we can argue about how the park all played out, but we had 1,000 people watching a movie within 7 months of this administration taking office. Now we have movies in the park, we've got kids playing in the park. I actually think that what we're going to take, and we can disagree all day, and I know right now this staircase is not popular, but you know what? My job is to just to help this city. And I think actually where there was once a wall, there would be a place where people will gather. There'll be an opportunity for us to congregate. There'll be an opportunity for movement throughout. Target, you mark my words, Target property, that hotel, the staircase, and what happens right where the Target property is, that'll be the key of the renaissance of this city. And 20 years from now, 10, 15 years from now, you'll see a city, a real city downtown, not something you just drive through and tell people not to look at. Dana, I'm sorry to make you wait.
Dana Holloway. Hi, neighbors. I would like to make 2 points on the grand staircase. During the state of the city or union, whatever it's called, city address, and then also other times, the comment has been made that the grand staircase has almost been entirely paid for by grants. And I found out from the LUTC chairman where to go look for that information. And they talked about LIFT funds and RITs and a bunch of other stuff. But I really wish I'd appreciate it when you say almost entirely. What is the almost that you're not telling us? Now, and what it was, because I looked it up, I'm getting smart, is out of the city coffers, it would be $125,000 is what they think it's going to cost us. I would like you to, when you guys tell us that, I want to hear that. I want to know it's going to be, okay, we think it's going to be $125,000. I could live with that if you tell me, but when you say what's almost entirely paid for, why aren't you telling me? Second point, when he talked about the budget for 2017, 2018, which was finalized in 2016 in December. So the first couple of months of 2017, they tried to put in the Transportation Benefit District. They called it TBD. That's where the city council and the mayor wanted to come up with a $930,000 of revenue for 2017 and the same amount for 2018. And that would have put, they hadn't specified it, but it would be $15 to $20 on your car tax if you lived in the city of Federal Way. So they had already put it in the budget as a revenue for 2 years, and they hadn't even developed the transportation budget district yet. I have a problem putting something in the budget that and you haven't even created it before. I think I tried to bring that up one of the city council members meetings, and you didn't get my point. The reason we're short is because the citizens did get upset about that because it was Sound Transit 3, and they lied to us too because they said the average adult would be impacted by, I think it was $163 annually for Sound Transit 3, and most of us figured out that that's more than just one license tab is $163, let alone your property tax, your sales tax. So by not doing the Transportation Benefit District, they were in a hole of $930,000 for each year. So yes, now we have the other thing, which is you all know about, which is your utility tax. So I just was wanting to clarify that because I tried to make that point at the city council meeting, and I don't think you guys understood how you can put something in a budget when you haven't even created it.
I know, and I thought, thank you, Dana. Thank you. Great points. This is why actually these meetings are so important. And sometimes it's very important that sometimes we talk past each other. And so let me say this in a let me just put this in very objective terms, okay? Dana, we actually pulled out that in large part because of your impassioned plea. And you're, and that's, you were very impassioned. And so here's what happened, you guys. So, and I can see how, this is actually why this is so important that we have these conversations. I can see how things look. Mary talked about how things look and how they affected. We put the TBD in our budget, okay? The Transportation Benefit District. That was part of the budget. That was passed. Once it's passed, you have to create it. So there is a process. It's like following a recipe. You pass it, you create it, and it's part of your budget. You say you're going to do it, and then you've got to go through a very public process to actually create the TBD, and then you've got to have that public process. But now I'm going to tell you something, and I'm going to, I'm going to give you the courtesy of candor, okay? What occurred and why that failed, honestly, is because of a campaign on Nextdoor that instead of a $15 car tab, it was essentially campaigned when it went out to 23 neighborhoods and went out to all of the city that we were going to raise people's car tabs by $50, or that it could go up to $50 without a vote. And that kind of misinformation, or at least the impression they gave, we started getting hundreds of phone calls that we're going to increase people's car tabs by $50. I have to tell you, the hardest thing, I mean, I love this job. It is an honor and a privilege to do this job. But one of the most difficult, the hardest thing about it sometimes is to fight misinformation, or at least address it, and to do so in a manner that's not preachy or that's not condescending or aggressive. And I'm working on it, but that was just not true. And it was just a $15 car tab, but it wouldn't have mattered at that point what we said, because people weren't going to believe us, and people were convinced that we were going to add a $50 car tab. So we pulled it out. But we were doing exactly, it was like making a batch of cookies. We were like, do this, then do this, then do this, and then do this. We had to create the instrument of taxation. In order to do what we said we were going to do in the budget, that's what we did. And then what happened is, once we pulled it out, then Ade added that other thing. I think it was 900 and whatever, the 936. And then when we pulled it out, we put that number and says, we were going to put the 936,000 in the budget. Now we're going to take it out. But what we didn't do, and what we should have done then, is cut $900,000 out. But exactly, and that's what we should have done. And that's what, and as soon as we did that, or found another source. So we were trying to cut, and we're trying to look for all kinds of different ways. And that's actually, that's on me, Dana. I should, at that point when we did that, we should have immediately stopped that. But I think at that point, I think we still thought we were going to be okay. We're going to move some things around. We're going to delay hiring people. And we're just kind of trying to move things around. We're trying as best we can to keep our finger in that dike and not have a problem. But when we got to February, then what happened was we were reconciling our books at the end of the year. And I kept saying to Ade, I need to know the number. What is the number? And he says, I don't quite know yet. I don't quite know. And then we were calculating all the revenues coming in. And then once we found out that we were 854 down, and trust me, this is not news I wanted to deliver, but I had an obligation at that point, regardless of how it looked. The very next day, the entire community knew. I got it out there, and I just said, this is critically important, because we had to bridge that 854 prior to even starting the 19 and 20 budget. And that's my job. And so I moved very aggressively to do what I thought was in the best interest of the city. Now, it's made a bunch of people angry, but you know what? My job is to make sure that, and we had a study session where we addressed it immediately. And then we had a number of council meetings on this, and we did everything we could. So I think, oh yeah, thank you. That was a second point I want to talk about. Thank you. So you guys, I work for you. And I understand that some of this is frustrating. Some of this is just information. Now, on the staircase, the 125, as we've said, is REIT money. It's real estate excise tax money. It's the 125 is what the city's portion is REIT money. It's not coming out of general fund for the staircase. Let's work it out together tomorrow. Okay. I wouldn't say it on camera in front of everybody if I didn't honestly believe it. But let's work on it together tomorrow. Marwan, you still here? Actually, Marwan will know. Marwan tells me. And actually, was it a little bit less than 125? Well, you tell me. You tell them.
Actually, the city portion of it is $125,000. All of the other fund, it's coming from grant funding. Actually, I may have the exact number, but the total project cost is approximately $3,600,000, and the only portion that the city will be paying is $125,000, and that's coming from REIT, which only could be used for capital improvement project.
You know what, you guys? Marwan, can you come here for a second?
Sure.
All right, how many years you been with the city?
23 years,
And how many years you been doing this?
45 years.
He's going to retire this September. Let's give him a big round of applause. Thank you. So, you guys, if you have, there's information like that out there. Let me, if you know, and I think I've got staff that's been here probably about 2 hours and 20 minutes. Does anybody have, and I can come to you and hand the microphone. Anybody have any last questions or comments? I want to say thank you. You've been a great, do I see something? All right. So send us an email, and I think it's important as a community that if we disagree with each other, we do so respectfully, but we need to hear it. And thank you so much for coming. Thank you for being a great audience.